Welcome back everyone to another episode of Kaiju Customs. Today we're customizing Zoa Muruchi. Well, I'm not customizing it. For some customs in this series, I commissioned my pal Yaoyao9 to do some work for me in customizing some figures, because she can do a way better job than I ever could dream of. So I'm not going to beat around the bush, and I'm going to hand this over to her to explain the process behind making the Zoa Muruchi custom.
Hello everybody, my name is Yao, and I run the Yaoyao9 channel on YouTube. For the past few weeks, I was given the opportunity by everybody's favorite meteor human, Daikaiju Legends, to work on a few toys that he planned to use for his upcoming programs. In addition to that, he has also offered to give me this opportunity to speak to all of you in this unscripted manner regarding the procedures that I undertake for every single commission. So, let's get a move on. The first step to a custom is essentially very basic. It's the prep work that goes into making the base body of a figure perfect before you apply any paint. Because if you apply paint first and then you realize, oh wait, there's this seam line or there's this break that I never fixed before, it becomes this really awkward issue. With the figures that Daikaiju Legends ordered from me, however, which is the Zoa Muruchi and the Grugio Bone, those are very simple, because they're just repaints. And with most repaints, what you would want to do is to just first wash the figure in some hot soapy water to get rid of whatever mold release or whatever chemicals that Bandai would possibly put in their factories in the injection molds, just to make sure that the paint adheres to the figures 100%. But with the Zoa Muruchi that Daikaiju Legends sent me, it had a defect where the neck connects to the body. There is a tear and a hole present, and it looks to be left there when somebody broke the glue seal on the neck. And unfortunately, that's just an inherent risk that comes with breaking glue seals on soft vinyl toys. That is something that must be fixed, because of course, it's going to look ludicrously ugly once it's painted. So what I have this product. It's called Tamiya Putty Basic Type. It's pretty cheap. You can find it at most hobby stores or Amazon. Now this stuff behaves essentially like toothpaste. It's kind of a liquidy solid. It dries into this hard but somewhat flexible plastic type product. It's essentially just liquid ABS plastic. And it makes it really perfect to work on for vinyl figures because this stuff has some self-contained adhesives. The next step to making your custom is to add in the base coat of color that would give a bed, so to speak, for your other colors to layer on top of when you're making the custom. Now, I personally use what I would like to refer to as an orthodox method, and we're going to get into a less orthodox method later on. As for my method, I like to use a gray base coat because I feel like gray is this very neutral color when it comes to color layering, where when you have gray at the bottom, you're not going to get as much of an effect in terms of really impacting how your color looks versus if you're using something like white or black, because I feel like those really amplify the type of color you're going to get. So with Daikaiju Legends figures, I went with a basic gray coat, but I did not attach any black for shading. The reason for that mostly comes down to my airbrush is really unable to spray in such a small radius that I can highlight the smaller details on the 500 figures without just blasting them with black. So let's talk color base coat and color layering, because that's essentially just the same process as what I'm doing, except to an extent it's a little bit easier. With gray and black as your base coat, what you're essentially doing is that when you're applying a new color over the figure, say you're applying blue, the blue will look slightly brighter or slightly darker depending on which part it's being covered. Trying to go for a color base coat means that you're still using some primer, and most of the time you're using gray primer, because why wouldn't you? So for me, it's a double win when I use gray primer and black shadows. But for Daikaiju Legends figures, I still did use a color base coat just to try and apply the same effects. Muruchi is two tones of blue for the most part. You have a deeper shade in some of the exposed gill slits, what I like to call them, on the neck and on the body. And to get that, you really need the shading. And couple that with how small the figure is, where I can't do the usual gray and black shading, I'll have to use color layering, and that's what gets us to our next part when it comes to painting figures, which is the difference between using the dry brushing technique. You're essentially just trying to mimic how an airbrush does things. You're using a dry brush that's, has really coarse bristles so that they don't really bend to the contours of the figure. And you're relying on the contours of the figure itself to have minimal amounts of paint wipe off on some of the elevated areas so that you have essentially a faded effect. And that is applied on the projects that I've been working on for Daikaiju Legends. With Muruchi, it's an even greater issue because this was a case where I needed to get the right shade and I had already messed up in the painting process prior. So why didn't I go with wet brushing? Because wet brushing is essentially just applying a thin layer of paint and you're going to get the shading effect regardless. Dry brushing just does it better. Now, that's not to say that wet brushing has no merits. If you're trying to get a flat sheet of color, there's no better way of getting a flat, even, smooth coat on your figure than wet brushing. You're thinning your paint, you're getting, that smooth coat. The paint is really thin, it's evened out, it's all good. But with dry brushing, what you're able to achieve is you're able to achieve a near airbrush experience where the colors are a lot more exaggerated. For Muruchi, it's a lot of washes of brown to try and get the more brownish texture into the yellow parts of the fin. And another reason that I chose to use dry brushing for Zoa Muruchi when it comes to the light blue application is that dry brushing has this unique thing to it. It will bypass a lot of the details that are inherently on the figure, while using airbrushes, it will just paint over the area. Since it's being sprayed out of an airbrush, the airbrush inherently ignores all the details that were on the figure to begin with anyway. But with dry brushing, you can just ignore the details and just paint the raised surfaces, and that's how I got some of the better looks for Zoa Muruchi, where you can see the gilt slits are still the nice dark blue, but the main body has been changed to a very nice china blue. Let's talk color choice, because in hindsight, color choice really should have been at the beginning of this video, because it's very important trying to get the right shades of color for your figure. But I feel like placing it back here is a lot more relevant for the commentary that I'm doing on this piece that I did for Daikaiju Legends, because it represents how much I had my own ego up my own ass and how much it came back to bite me, because there's a lot of mistakes I made with this project that Daikaiju Legends was nice enough to give me extensions and, pardons to try and correct everything. With Zoa Muruchi, that was the biggest issue, because at the beginning, as the pictures will probably show, I got the colors basically completely wrong. For some reason, I feel like my eyes aren't that great at recognizing what colors are, because I thought the fins were this neon green, and I thought that the color for the body was kind of a bright navy blue instead of a china blue. So there was a lot of mistakes being made, and again, as I said before, this is also one of the reasons why I don't do color shading. But color choice is important not only because of that, but also because you have to think about how color layering works, how color will be affected by the bottom layer versus how the top layer will respond. Heed my warnings really before making any inalterable changes to a figure. Do yourself a favor and learn the color wheel as much as you can, and remember that even if you screw up, people like me who get paid to do these things, I screw up too. And just to remember that there's always a way to correct it. For me, there are a couple ways that I do these final bits, and it all depends on which project I'm working on. Using some flat coat is actually ostensibly a really good idea. But not only that, using these finishes really do work to protect your figure as well. Having a gloss coat or a flat coat on your finished result makes it so that any scratches or abrasives will have to hit the coat first before it really impacts the paint. So it's a win-win overall. It's a little bit costly to buy these things. It's about $4 a can for gloss coat, and it's a little bit more expensive for flat, but in the end I think they're very much worth it. And based on the results that Daikaiju Legends has for his figures, I think it speaks for itself as to how successful this methodology is. All in all, that's my basic procedure for every one of my commissions. Now, of course, it's not the most detailed guide, but I think this commentary goes in depth enough that you all can understand how much work goes into each piece that I make, and hopefully this has been helpful to all of you in case you want to start trying to make your own customs.
So again, thank you to Yaoyao9 for doing a fantastic job with Zoa Muruchi. It looks fantastic, doesn't it? If what Yao does interests you at all, I've linked to everywhere that you can find her in the description below. And here's the final comparison between the original figure and the final customization.
Once again, I'd like to thank Daikaiju Legends for giving me this gracious opportunity to speak to all of you. If you would like to see more of my work, you can access my Facebook page, facebook.com/Kaiju Reanimation Yard, and you can drop me a commission if you want to there. Otherwise, if you want to see some of the time-lapse, or not really time-lapse, but slideshow format videos on how I do all of my work, you can find my YouTube channel at youtube.com/user/Yaoyao9. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you again to Daikaiju Legends, and hopefully you enjoyed your commissions.
I would like to give a special thank you to Patreon supporters GWRzilla, Justice, Liquid Pestar, Jimmy Moore, Jeff King, Johnny Sacco, Jaws Infinity, and a very special thank you to Ultriab. If you would like to learn how you can get your name listed at the end of each of my videos as well, in addition to some other awesome rewards, then be sure to visit patreon.com/DaikaijuLegends.